Now, independent versus dependent variables. Okay, so your inputs, those are the independent variables. The outputs are the dependent variable. Now, what do we mean by variable? Okay, so here's what we mean by variable. Time is a variable. Okay, so if time is your independent variable, then the inputs are going to be times. Okay, and if money or earned or cost is your dependent variable, then your y's are going to be number of dollars. Okay, so like $5, right? Dollars would be the variable, and then the output, that's the actual dollars. $5, $6, $7, $8. Okay, so that's kind of the way it works here. And it is kind of tricky to identify which one's which, but when we go to write equations of functions, super helpful. So now identifying independent and dependent variables. So here we go. A painter must measure a room before deciding how much paint to buy. So we're going to decide which one is the independent variable and which one is dependent. So the amount of paint depends on how big the room is. Okay, so when you use the word depends on, that you're talking about the dependent variable. Okay, so in this case here, the dependent variable, the amount of paint, depends on how big the room is. So your independent variable is going to be how big the room is, like square feet, and then the dependent will be the how much paint you're going to buy, how many gallons. Okay, the height of a candle decreased d centimeters for every hour it burns. So the height depends on how long it burns. Okay, so in this case here, the height of the candle, the dependent is going to be the height of the candle depends on the time, the number of hours. So your y values is going to be like centimeters because the variable is height, and then your independent variable, your x's, are going to be number of hours or minutes or seconds because the variable is time. Here we have a veterinarian must weigh an animal before determining the amount of medication. In other words, the amount of medication depends on how heavy the animal is. So the weight of the animal, that's going to be your independent variable. So your values for X is going to be pounds, or kilograms, depending on where you live, right? And then the dependent is going to be how much medication is given. So your values for Y's is going to be like milliliters or whatever it ends up being. Frozen blueberries cost $3.99 per pound. So the cost depends on how much you bought. Okay, so your independent variable is pounds. The dependent is going to be cost.